The day the family fell apart, Lisa Halberg had never imagined herself driving back to her childhood home under such heavy circumstances. The early autumn sky over the small Midwestern town was the color of dull steel, thick with the kind of stillness that makes even time seem to pause. The call had come in the middle of the night, a jumble of words from Jessica, her younger sister. Their parents had been in a car accident and hadn't survived. Just hours later, Lisa was on a plane, numbness spreading through her like ice. The journey from the airport to Willow Drive was almost surreal. As she drove, familiar landmarks flickered past. The red brick library where her mother volunteered, the modest bakery where her father once bought fresh rolls on Sunday mornings. Memories pressed against the car windows, persistent and unwelcome. Each sight brought a mixture of comfort and sharp grief. Pulling up to the house, Lisa was met instantly with a wave of nostalgia and sorrow. The Halberg house looked the same as it always had, a stately Victorian with peeling white paint and a sagging porch swing that creaked in the wind. But the garden was unkempt, and overgrown hedges seemed to underscore the absence within. Lisa winced at the sight of her mother's rose bushes, now choked with weeds. Inside, the house was silent, almost sacred. The air held traces of old perfume and lemon polish. Lisa set her suitcase down in the hall, her heart pounding as she walked through the rooms, each one echoing with pieces of her childhood. Halloween costumes tucked in the attic, the scuffed marks on the kitchen table from board games played on rainy afternoons, the faint black and white photos still lining the mantel over the cold fireplace. Everything was just as their parents had left it, and yet nothing felt the same. As the day blurred on, Jessica and her husband Mark arrived. The first moments were a blur of awkward embraces and hurried condolences. There was something uneasy in Jessica's tone, a tightness in the way she spoke. Lisa could sense the tension beneath the chatter about funeral arrangements, but she pushed it aside, focusing instead on practicalities. Still, when Jessica avoided Lisa's gaze and Mark retreated to make phone calls in another room, Lisa felt a flutter of anxiety begin, deep in her chest. That evening, alone in her childhood bedroom, Lisa let herself mourn. She ran her fingers along the grooves of her old dresser, remembering her mother's laughter and her father's gentle lectures about kindness and responsibility. She grieved not only for her parents, but for the sense of family that had tied them all together, wondering if anything could ever be whole again. The first day back was a patchwork of sorrowful reunions, practical discussions, and silent contemplation. The house, heavy with memories and unsaid words, became more than just a setting. It was a living testament to all that had been lost. Lisa lay awake long past midnight, haunted by a single, aching truth. Nothing would ever be the same. Ruins of memory. Morning light crept through the heavy curtains, casting pale stripes across the faded quilt from Lisa's childhood. She awoke groggy, eyes and chest aching, from a night spent chasing restless dreams. The house loomed with a strange quiet, different from the hush of grief, more like a vacuum where life had been sucked away. Motivated by equal parts obligation and distraction, Lisa showered and dressed and made her way downstairs, ready to face the day's first true task, sorting through the traces of her parents' lives. The living room had become a staging ground, stacks of boxes and old photo albums crowding the coffee table. Lisa moved among them, tugging open flaps and breathing in the bittersweet scent of old paper. and cedar. She began in the study, a room once forbidden to children, a place where her father had paid bills and her mother wrote grocery lists on yellowed pads of paper. Now, every drawer was a time capsule. Lisa found checkbooks, warranty cards for appliances long gone, her father's service medals in a velvet box, and bundles of handwritten letters, some in her mother's looping script, others addressed to names she barely remembered. Each item she uncovered nudged a different memory free. An empty cookie tin recalled winter snowstorms and afternoons spent baking. A ticket stub to a forgotten baseball game brought back the sticky heat of August and her father's booming laugh. Lifting a stack of bank statements, Lisa noticed 2 envelopes, one addressed to Jessica, one to herself, set apart from the rest, written in her mother's carefully slanted print, but never mailed. The contents were simple messages of love and gentle reminders to look out for each other no matter what. The words struck Lisa deeply, echoing now with an ironic bitterness. In the hallway closet, Lisa unearthed coat after coat, most smelling faintly of mothballs, one still holding a scrap of cinnamon gum in the pocket, the kind her father had always offered her on car rides. She paused, squeezing the fabric, reluctant to let go of the moments the objects conjured. By early afternoon, Jessica appeared in the doorway, watching silently as Lisa sorted through papers at the dining room table. Their conversation was stilted. Jessica suggested tossing most of the old files, but Lisa hesitated, insisting on a more careful review. When Mark drifted in, he half-heartedly offered to help, but soon excused himself, citing important work calls. The pattern was clear. Lisa was left sifting alone, her siblings hovering at the edges, unwilling to immerse themselves in the emotional labor. While combing through a battered metal filing cabinet, Lisa felt a pang of confusion. The folder containing the house deed was thinner than she remembered. Several documents appeared to be missing. Receipts for recent repairs were filed neatly, but the property tax statements simply weren't there. Odd, but perhaps just misplaced in the chaos. Yet, as Lisa methodically worked through drawer after drawer, the sense of unease grew. She found a bank envelope tucked far at the back, containing a record of a recent withdrawal, one she hadn't known about. It was dated just days before her parents' accident. Lisa made a mental note, the details prickling at her mind, but set it aside for the moment. The sun shifted in the windows as Lisa worked into evening, the pile of to-be-kept boxes slowly growing while the two-toss stack remained mostly empty. She couldn't bear to discard even mundane things. Her mother's quirky recipe cards, her father's well-worn baseball cap, a small jewelry box with a broken clasp. Each object was a thread in her tapestry of memory, impossible to cut loose. When dusk settled, Lisa finally stopped, standing in the center of the cluttered living room. She realized she was searching for something beyond heirlooms or paperwork, perhaps a sense of direction, or an anchor in this sea of loss. The house felt both sheltering and suffocating, heavy with untold stories and the ghost of her parents' wishes. As she ascended the stairs for another sleepless night, Lisa's mind swirled with questions. The missing documents, the strange withdrawal, the cold distance in her sister's voice. Grief was fracturing into suspicion, and the ruins of memory seemed, suddenly, to hold secrets she couldn't ignore. Early signs, the days began to slip into a slow, uneasy routine. With each morning, the Halberg house felt a little less familiar, the echoes of Lisa's parents overlapping with tension that now seemed to lurk in every corner. Though grief was still thick in the air, it was gradually joined by a wary vigilance, a sense that not everything happening beneath this aging roof could be explained by loss alone. Lisa noticed small things first, harmless perhaps, to someone not searching for assurances that nothing was amiss. Jessica was relentless in urging Lisa to speed up the paperwork for settling the estate. She brought up topics like lawyers, probate, and getting things over with every time they crossed paths in the kitchen or the hallway. Mark, once jovial and quick to offer a hand at family dinners, now offered only brief, distracted interactions, always in a hurry to take a phone call or send an email. It was as if both of them wanted to wrap up any family business as fast as possible and move on. One morning, over stale coffee, Jessica handed Lisa a stack of official-looking papers. "Dad mentioned wanting us to sort this quickly," she insisted, voice slightly too brisk. Lisa thumbed through the forms. Tentative drafts of inheritance documents, a quitclaim deed, requests for signatures. Her name appeared on most of them, but already filled in were lines giving Jessica and Mark control over critical decisions. The paperwork seemed a step or two ahead of where Lisa thought the family was, emotionally or legally. When Lisa hesitated, suggesting that they should consult the family attorney or wait until they had reviewed all the documents, she saw Jessica's jaw tighten. "There's no reason to drag this out," Jessica pressed. "Nothing's going to change what happened." After that, both Jessica and Mark seemed to hover a little closer to the study where the important files were kept, sometimes changing the subject abruptly if Lisa entered at the wrong moment. Lisa's discomfort grew into suspicion the afternoon she discovered the desk in her father's old office unlocked. Before, her parents had kept certain drawers secure. Now, files inside seemed to have been shuffled. Folders for the house title, savings accounts, and insurance policies were all thinner, as if someone had removed documents. The inventory Lisa remembered her parents keeping, meticulously updated each year, was nowhere to be found. The family's safety deposit box key, once taped to the inside of a drawer, was missing entirely. That same evening, Lisa overheard Mark speaking to someone on the phone in clipped, cautious tones. He was standing in the backyard, but through the open window, Lisa heard snatches. "Once it's signed, we'll be in the clear. She's taking her time. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet." The conversation ended abruptly when Lisa stepped outside. Mark offered a vague excuse about work and quickly changed the subject. The siblings' dynamic had shifted. Lisa felt herself treated more like an obstacle than a sister. When she suggested the three of them go through each step together, Jessica brushed her off. "You always make things complicated." Under this surface of polite exchange, accusations and doubts buzzed like static. Lisa started waking in the night, replaying past conversations and wondering at the sudden, urgent insistence from Jessica and Mark. With every passing day, Lisa's unease solidified into quiet resolve. She began to keep meticulous notes and take photos of important documents. Each unexplained absence, missing folder, or unwillingness to answer questions was no longer dismissed as a product of grief or stress. Instead, she cataloged every detail, driven by a growing conviction that whatever was happening in her childhood home, it went beyond sorrow and demanded answers. By the time the week ended, Lisa realized she no longer just mourned her parents or the family they had once been. She was beginning to mourn her trust as well. The truth emerges: the Halberg house, once a cradle of gentle memories, had become a place of hushed conversations and careful footsteps. With each passing day, the sense of foreboding that clung to Lisa grew heavier, crystallizing from vague suspicion into the need for evidence. Yet she clung to the hope, almost naively, that there was some innocent explanation for the strange behaviors, the missing documents, the pressure to sign. In the quiet hours before dawn, while the rest of the house slept, Lisa found herself pacing the upstairs hallway, replaying recent interactions, alert to every offhand remark and sidelong glance. One late afternoon, a storm swept in from the north, blanketing the neighborhood in gray mist and rattling the Halberg house's century-old windows. Lisa sat alone at the dining table, sifting through piles of old tax returns and family photographs. The air smelled faintly of rain and aging wood. It was while she was archiving a box of personal effects that she heard voices rise from the kitchen below, Jessica and Mark arguing, their whispers sharpening into anxious, urgent tones that carried just enough for Lisa's heart to skip a beat. She slid quietly down the stairs, grateful for the thick carpeting muffling her steps. At the kitchen entry, she paused, ears straining. The tension between Jessica and Mark was unmistakable now, their words tumbling out in a frustrated staccato. "We can't afford for her to keep looking," Jessica hissed. "What if she finds out about—" "She won't," Mark interrupted, his voice tight. "We've already moved everything important. As soon as she signs, it's all settled." "She's not stupid, Mark. She keeps asking about the safety deposit box." Mark exhaled sharply. "Then we keep deflecting. You just have to act like nothing's wrong." There was a beat of silence. "If she figures it out, look, just make her feel guilty for slowing things down. Remind her, Dad wanted this resolved quickly." Lisa pressed herself against the mill, breath shallow, her mind racing. The safety deposit box, that detail confirmed her hunch that something substantial had been hidden from her, likely related to the house or their parents' finances. A tremor of anger, sharper than before, shot through her. Gone was any hope that her misgivings were merely echoes of grief and paranoia. Now there were secrets, confessions, deliberate plans. Stunned, but determined not to confront them without proof, Lisa slipped quietly away before they could spot her. She made her way to the sunroom, where her parents had spent countless lazy Sundays reading and talking. She sat and tried to process what she had overheard. The words circled in her head, growing clearer with every repetition. Act, hide, move, sign. Guilt mingled with disbelief. How long had this been going on? Had Jessica planned this even before their parents died? Or was it an impulse born of grief and opportunity? Lisa's next days became a hunt for answers. She reviewed everything she had already cataloged and realized she'd have to go further, searching not just for missing possessions, but for any paper trail Jessica and Mark might have left behind. Quietly, she set about her task, careful to appear preoccupied with estate matters if anyone asked. Her first step was re-examining her parents' study. She'd thought she was thorough before, but this time she applied a detective's meticulous focus, checking under drawers and behind bookshelves. In the false bottom of a battered dresser, she found a small, locked box she'd never noticed before. Her father's old safe. The key was nowhere in sight, but Lisa's heart leapt. She hid it in her suitcase, out of reach of prying eyes, determined to find the key when she could search in peace. That night, unable to sleep, she tiptoed into the garage. Among boxes of Christmas decorations, she discovered her father's toolbox, There, hidden beneath a false tray, was a ring of odd keys. After a few tries, one fit the small safe. Inside, Lisa discovered a compact trove. Her parents' original will, insurance papers showing equal distribution among the children, a stamped deposit box, contract listing her father and Lisa as co-owners, and a spiral-bound notebook filled with her father's neat handwriting, monthly account balances, and hand-drawn diagrams of the family property. She photographed every document, then carefully restored everything in the safe. The sense of relief and validation mingled with anger. These were the very documents that Jessica and Mark had insisted were lost or never existed. Now, Lisa had indisputable evidence, both the intent of her parents and the proof that her sister was intentionally hiding information. But this was only part of the puzzle. Lisa needed to know what was inside the safety deposit box. The next morning, under the guise of running an errand, she went to the local bank. There, she presented her ID and the contract she'd just found. The teller, after scanning documents, led Lisa to a private room. Her hand trembled as she unlocked the box. Inside, she found more. Titles, bonds, jewelry, assets her parents clearly intended for both daughters. Among them was a letter dated just weeks before their passing, addressed to Lisa and Jessica. It was written in her father's familiar script. No matter what, treat each other with respect. This is not just our legacy, but our family's future. Protect each other and protect this home. Lisa closed her eyes, struggling with the poignant sorrow of her father's words set against the ugly reality unfolding in the present. It struck her just how far they had fallen from the vision their parents had held for their family. Returning to the house, Lisa acted as if nothing had changed. Even as her mind churned with strategy and outrage, she began watching her sister and Mark more closely than ever. Every interaction, every hurried conversation took on new meaning. She noticed Jessica quickly shuffling receipts and files from the dining table when she entered. Odd cash withdrawals appeared in recent statements, made in Jessica's handwriting, though the accounts supposedly hadn't been used in months. Mark grew twitchier, sometimes snapping at Jessica in sharp whispers behind closed doors. Late one evening, Lisa heard Jessica on the phone in the guest bedroom, her voice trembling with nerves. She knows something. I can tell. We can't wait any longer. If this goes to court... The rest was muffled, but it sent chills through Lisa. They were desperate. She realized that anything left to chance would only embolden them. That night, Lisa spent hours digitizing every piece of evidence: photos, scans, handwritten notes, copies of emails she'd intercepted on the shared computer. She researched local probate laws and discreetly reached out to their family attorney, explaining that she wanted a private consultation regarding the estate, but not yet revealing the full scope of what she suspected. She documented everything, building a fortress of facts for whatever would come next. Through it all, the emotional weight pressed down on her. The betrayal, the stress, the heartache of seeing her family fracture day by day. Lisa could remember countless moments when she and Jessica had been inseparable as children, partners in games and mischief, confidants through high school heartbreaks and college choices. The trust she had once placed in her sister now felt irreparably broken. As the rain tapered off and sunlight returned, Lisa sat on the edge of her childhood bed and realized her life had split irreparably in two, before and after. She was not just grieving her parents anymore, but mourning the family she thought she still had,
She's not
the
stupid,
unity her
Mark.
parents had
She
cherished
keeps asking
and tried
about
to
the safety
preserve.
deposit box.
Yet beneath the sorrow was steel. Betrayal
Then we
hurt,
keep
but
deflecting.
Lisa would not let it cost her
Reminded.
everything. Not her
Dad wanted this resolved
self-respect,
quickly.
nor her future. She was ready, finally, to confront whatever came next with unwavering determination and a clear view of the truth she now held in her hands. Gathering evidence in silence, Lisa woke with a steely
Act,
determination
hide,
that hadn't been
move,
present
sign.
before. The sharp line between suspicion and certainty had blurred over the past several days,
Did she plan
hardening
this
her
all
resolve
along?
into a quiet mission. The anger and grief still simmered beneath the surface, but they had become fuel, energy to propel her through each careful, calculated move. If the trust that bound her family had already been shattered, then the only thing left was the truth. She began her morning with a cup of black coffee, eyes scanning over her handwritten notebook, the beginnings of her evidence log. For the first time since her return, she felt focused. Instead of letting the chaos pull her under, she set out to capture every detail and trace, determined to prove what she had overheard and suspected. There was a sense of surveillance in her every motion. Lisa needed to see everything and leave no hint that she saw at all. Her first step was to create digital backups of all incriminating documents.
Good morning.
At home, she used her phone's camera to quietly photograph the legal papers, account statements, and the will she had found in her father's safe. When Mark and Jessica were out, meeting the lawyer, Lisa hurried to the local print shop, where she uploaded scans of the originals to her private cloud. She labeled files purposefully: deed discrepancies, will, original,
We've just been
recent
working through some
withdrawals,
of the,
Jessica, and so
anomalies.
on. She even recorded little audio notes to herself, recapping what she'd seen and what she still needed proof of, ensuring a trail no one else could see or erase. Lisa reached out, discreetly, to the family attorney. She requested a confidential in-person meeting and made it clear she needed advice in complete privacy. When asked by Jessica about errands, she simply replied, "I need to drop off Dad's old books at the library." The meeting with the lawyer was a careful dance. Lisa shared enough for him to be concerned, presenting copies of the will, details of recent unauthorized transactions, and her suspicion that signatures had been forged. The attorney's sharp look and measured tone gave away more than words. He understood the delicacy and gravity of her situation, instructing her to continue gathering and preserving documentation. "Don't confront them yet," he warned. "Let's build a full picture before anyone tips their hand." Returning to the house, Lisa doubled down on subtlety. She made it a point to take walks at odd hours, pretending to phone a friend while actually taking photos of the mailbox's outgoing envelopes, which
Emily
Jessica
Carter,
always
you stand
seemed in a
accused of
hurry
professional
to mail
misconduct.
herself. She found that one envelope addressed to the county recorder was missing its stamp, but its contents, a
I am
draft
truly
transfer
sorry
of the
for what
house
happened.
deed, were clear from the slip left in the trash. Lisa placed the slip into a dated plastic sleeve and tucked it into the bottom of her purse. In the evenings, she kept her laptop open, locked and password protected, while appearing to merely browse old family photos. In reality, she was organizing a timeline: dates of the car accident, Jessica's first bank withdrawal, Mark's phone records, and the various attempts to get Lisa to sign over her inheritance rights. Each time she overheard a tense exchange between her sister and brother-in-law, she recorded the gist of the conversation in her master file, down to the tense pauses and panicked changes in their tone when the subject of the estate came up. One afternoon, Lisa put on her best casual
Did you hear
act
what happened?
and asked
No, it's
Jessica
terrible.
about their parents' safe deposit
believe it.
box at the bank. Jessica's response was smooth,
I
almost
deeply
rehearsed.
regret.
"Oh, I think Dad closed it years ago, didn't he? Everything we need has to be in the house." Lisa feigned agreement, but made a mental note of Jessica's too quick answer and the way her hands fluttered in her lap. Meanwhile,
Marcus,
Mark's attempts at supervising Lisa's progress grew more obvious.
This is not right.
He drifted through rooms Lisa was working in, glancing at stacks of papers, but never really offering help. Instead, giving pointed advice. "Just toss the old stuff. None of it matters. Now." Lisa would smile and nod, then neatly sort the smallest receipts and notes into her to review later box, which she stashed under a pile of coats in the hall closet each night. Lisa realized she'd need something more. Proof not only of the intent to forge or hide documents, but the actual paper trail. She checked the home computer and quickly set up her own separate guest login profile for research, making certain her data would remain private. She then installed a discrete cloud backup tool, just in case the device mysteriously malfunctioned or accidentally got wiped. A break came when Lisa noticed the family printer had been used recently. Following a hunch, she checked the scan log on the device. Among records of old recipes and receipts, she pieced together a series of scans. Her parents' driver licenses, signature pages from outdated insurance policies, and, most troubling, a set of forms for property transfer with Jessica's distinct handwriting in the margins. Lisa exported all scanned documents to her drive, adding them to her growing archive. Late at night, while everyone slept, Lisa quietly slipped out to the backyard to call the bank's fraud and estate services hotline. She explained the situation to a wary representative, referencing the will and her recent authorized access to the safety deposit box. Without revealing too much, knowing the investigation had to be airtight, she gathered more instruction. Document everything, watch for suspicious transactions, and note any evidence of pressure or duress around estate decisions. Lisa listened carefully to every sound in the house. When Jessica spent a little too long on the phone, Lisa would jot a note about possible contact with the county offices. If Mark left the room in a hurry when Lisa entered, she'd retrace his path, sometimes finding sticky notes carelessly discarded in his wake. Call bank authorization, or title transfer, urgent. Each scrap became a small, heavy weight in the mounting file of proof. The hardest moments came when Lisa questioned her own heart. At times, guilt and doubt gnawed at her. Was she tearing the family further apart by investigating? Could she really trust herself after the trauma of loss? On some sleepless nights, Lisa reviewed her files, double and triple checking her conclusions. But the facts spoke for themselves. Patterns of deception, calculated isolation from the legal process, and growing boldness in the attempts to take what was not rightfully theirs. One Saturday afternoon, Lisa excused herself from a tense lunch, claiming the need for fresh air. She drove to a local notary's office, carrying a folder of originals and verified copies. There, she had each page stamped and witnessed. Her father's will, the discovery of new account statements, proofs of attempted deed transfers, and her contemporaneous diary entries. The notary grew increasingly solemn as Lisa laid out the stack, finally offering quiet words of sympathy as she slid the completed paperwork back across the polished wood desk. Lisa's days and nights blurred into a careful choreography of investigation, concealment, and strategic simplicity, never leaving a trace, never revealing just how much she had gathered or how
We're gonna
far
need a
she had
full
come.
list of your social
She learned to
contacts.
smile through forced family dinners while hiding flash drives in the lining of her luggage.
Remember
Every
what's at
time
stake here.
Jessica and Mark tried to corner her over wrapping up the paperwork soon,
Yes.
Lisa would politely change the subject, confidence growing with every hidden piece of evidence she added to her collection. What had started as a jumble of pain and uncertainty emerged in tidy, ordered folders. Lisa's proof was no longer hypothetical. It was documented reality. The weight of secrecy pressed on her, but Lisa felt the balance shifting with every careful step. As summer stilled outside the windows and the town slipped into quiet routines, Lisa prepared herself for what would come next. She was no longer just her parents' grieving daughter. She was the keeper of their true legacy, the guardian of justice for all they had worked to build. The silent work of truth was almost done. Soon, everything that had been hidden would come to light. The decisive blow. Lisa awoke before dawn, her nerves as tight as violin strings. The day had come, the day to bring the truth into the open, no matter the cost. Every page she had copied, every note she had taken, every recording and document stored in triplicate on cloud, drive, and physical folder
Hello, is Mr. Thomason
was
available?
now marshaled as her silent army. She felt the burden of it all pressing on her chest. But beneath the anxiety, steel braced her spirit. She was not only fighting for her inheritance, but for the truth itself and for the dignity her parents had always taught her to hold sacred. That morning, a heavy summer haze clung to the neighborhood, glassing over the lawns in dew.
Just calm
Lisa
down, Lucas.
sat on the porch swing, coffee in hand, rehearsing what she would say. Across the yard, the house seemed poignant with memory and history, each window a silent witness to what was about to unfold. It was time to call for a family meeting. She chose her words with care,
Set up the extraordinary
leaving
session
handwritten notes
immediately.
beneath Jessica's and Mark's bedroom doors. Please meet me in the living room at 10 a.m. to discuss the resolution of Mom and Dad's estate. It's important that we do this together. Her heart pounded as she slid the papers under the doors. So formal, but that was the only way she could ensure Jessica and Mark would come without an excuse or an early escape. The hours before the meeting ticked by with slow, torturous intensity. Lisa arranged her folders on the table, each document sequentially ordered. The will, bank statements, notary certifications, digital timestamps, printouts of emails, attorney recommendations, all marked with colored tabs. She placed a digital recorder, set to silent, inside her blazer pocket. Every movement had purpose. Her hands shook, but her mind remained clear. At 5 minutes to 10, Lisa took a deep, stabilizing breath and walked into the living room. She opened the curtains wide, letting sunlight fill the space. Not long after, Jessica and Mark appeared. Jessica in a neat linen blouse, her face drawn and pale, and Mark with his carefully constructed calm, eyebrows raised in polite inquiry. Jessica took a seat first, arms tightly crossed, eyes darting from the stack of papers on the coffee table back to Lisa's determined expression. Mark slumped onto the armchair, legs splayed out, a mask of casualness that looked brittle at the edges. Lisa didn't waste time. Thank you for coming. I know everyone wants closure, and I think we all deserve transparency. Before we proceed, I want to present the facts as I've discovered them. Her voice was level, measured, but carrying the edge of command. Mark gave a skeptical little grin. Lisa, we've already talked about this. There's no point in dragging.
Damn time.
Lisa cut him off with a raised palm. Mark, please. This time, I need you both to listen. She started with the will, laying out the notarized original, pointing to the passages about inheritance and joint responsibility, showing the discrepancies between it and the altered drafts she'd found among Jessica's and Mark's belongings. With each piece of evidence, Lisa built her case. The sequence of unauthorized withdrawals, the attempted title transfers, the forged signatures discovered in the scan logs, the disappearing documents now recovered and certified. To each new item, Jessica's composure unraveled further. Her lips thinned, her eyes skittered away. Mark's bravado crumbled, and he began drumming his fingers on the arm of the chair, jaw tight. There is more, Lisa continued, her resolve hardening. I have a detailed record of every attempt made to coerce me into signing away my share, and a log of every suspicious phone call, every forged document, and every effort to sideline me from the process. I have consulted with our family attorney and with a notary public. Both are prepared to testify to the authenticity of these documents and their irregularities. She paused, letting the words sink in, her gaze steely. Jessica finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper. Lisa, you've got it all wrong. No, Jessica. Lisa interrupted, softer now. I wanted to believe there was some mistake, that maybe grief had made us all behave strangely.
I understand how you feel.
But you know as well as I do, this was intentional. The evidence is right here, and if you want, we can go through every detail. Otherwise, I'm prepared to take this to court. An uneasy silence descended, broken only by the muffled tick of the old clock on the mantel. Jessica's shoulders sagged, and for the first time in days, Lisa saw something in her sister's eyes, besides manipulation, shame, and maybe fear. Mark, red-faced, couldn't meet Lisa's gaze. His voice was small. We just thought things would be easier if it was clear-cut. No one wanted a fight. Lisa straightened the pile of documents, each motion emphasizing her control of the facts. There didn't have to be a fight. You just had to be honest. This isn't just about money or property. It's about respect for what Mom and Dad wanted for us as a family. For a long time, no one spoke. Lisa gave them time, watching Mark's confident mask slip and Jessica's fingers tremble as she leafed silently through evidence. Finally, Jessica broke down, tears sliding silently down her face. We were scared, Lisa. I thought if we rushed through, we could be done with the pain. I didn't think you'd notice. Lisa's voice was steady, but cold. Notice? You tried to erase me from my own family's legacy. I'll never forget that. Mark's defensiveness snapped. Look, what do you want from us, Lisa? I want the truth acknowledged, and I want the process corrected. I'll be handing these files to our attorney and the authorities if necessary, Lisa said bluntly. You can agree to cooperate now or face the full legal consequences. The reality hung in the air, as heavy as a verdict. After a long, excruciating silence, Jessica nodded, defeated. We'll do what you ask. Just, please, let's keep this quiet. At least for the rest of the family. Mark gave no protest, his hands clenched on his knees. Lisa gathered up the folders, every page a testament, not only to her diligence, but to the cost of betrayal. She felt no triumph, only exhaustion, as if she'd carried the house itself on her shoulders. As she left the room, she heard Jessica's muffled sobs and Mark cursing under his breath, realizing that everything they'd tried to hide had finally come to light. It was done. The decisive blow had landed, not for revenge, but for justice, for the integrity of her parents' memory, and for her own peace. Lisa knew the days ahead would be marked by coldness, perhaps by legal battles and bitterness. But for the first time since she'd come home, she felt her conscience clear. As afternoon sunlight filtered through the windows, Lisa stood for a moment in the hall, eyes closed, breathing deeply. There was no going back. But now, finally, there was a way forward. Justice is served in the days following the confrontation. The Halberg house seemed to exhale, releasing years of tension into the still summer air. The weight that had pressed down so heavily on Lisa's chest now shifted, becoming something different. Less an ache, more a lingering soreness where the wound was beginning to heal. It was not over, far from it. The aftermath of truth, she realized, was its own kind of battle. Jessica and Mark could no longer avoid the consequences of their actions. Armed with Lisa's meticulously compiled evidence, the family attorney took swift and decisive steps to ensure that the law would recognize Lisa's rights. The emergency meeting Lisa had called had effectively ended any illusion of family unity, but it brought much-needed clarity. The attorney prepared formal letters for Jessica and Mark, putting them on notice. Any further attempts to misrepresent the will or interfere with the estate would result in immediate legal action. At first, Jessica seemed paralyzed by a mixture of sorrow, regret, and fear. She remained in her room most days, emerging only for meals that were perfunctory and silent. Mark, on the other hand, reacted with bouts of frustration and sullen resentment. He could barely look Lisa in the eye, muttering bitterly about dragged-out processes and lawyers ruining families. Yet neither dared touch another document without permission. The house, once the site of covert planning, was now Lisa's fortress of legitimacy. Legal proceedings began quickly. The family attorney filed notifications with the local probate court, attaching copies of the original will and supporting evidence notarized and time-stamped. The bank, alerted by Lisa's prior phone call and freshly submitted affidavits, blocked all suspicious transactions and required dual signatures for any account access. The county clerk's office, which had received the questionable deed transfer draft, was warned of possible fraud and instructed to flag any further title changes. Lisa participated in these processes with grim resolution. She provided statements, timelines, and every piece of evidence she'd gathered. The call logs, the financial records, the scanned forms bearing her sister's handwriting. At every step, she insisted on meticulous documentation. In her mind, this was not about winning, but restoring her parents' wishes and defending her own sense of right. The broader family soon became aware that something significant had occurred. Lisa did her best to maintain privacy about the sordid details, choosing instead to repeat a simple message. We had some legal confusion. I needed to make sure everything Mom and Dad wanted was honored. Rumors circulated. A cousin called from out of state. An aunt dropped off a casserole and lingered too long by the staircase, searching Lisa's face for answers. Lisa greeted these inquiries with a quiet dignity that both reassured and kept people at a respectful distance. Justice was not only about the law. It was about making things visible that had been hidden, repairing the moral fabric burned by deception. Lisa knew that she could never completely restore her trust in Jessica, nor undo the pain that had accompanied this ordeal. But she refused to dwell in bitterness. Instead, she focused on following her parents' intentions to the letter. The will was executed in accordance with their wishes, Assets were divided as specified,
Come in.
family heirlooms properly inventoried, and donations made to the charities her mother had cherished. Jessica and Mark,
Good night.
now publicly shamed
This is
within
a
the
solid
extended
plan.
family and neighborhood,
Agreed.
faced more than just legal setbacks. The local community, close-knit and steeped in old-fashioned values, withdrew from them. Jessica lost her position on the church volunteer board. Phone calls from friends went unreturned, and neighbors who once waved from their porches now offered only clipped hellos. Mark, whose side business relied on reputation and trust, saw clients fade away. The house, witness to all, held a silence that was both justice and consequence. Lisa herself did not relish her victory. The truest form of justice, she found, was simply clarity, the restoration of order from chaos. Still, she did not shy away from the pain that came with it. She arranged, with help from the attorney, for an official family mediation. There, in a wood-paneled office scented faintly with old paper and regret, she faced Jessica one final time regarding the estate. Lisa listened as her sister offered a halting apology, tears streaking her face. "I know it can never be the same," Jessica choked out. "But I hope, someday, you can forgive me." Lisa's reply was gentle, but uncompromising. "Forgiveness is complicated, Jess. Trust, even more so. But Mom and Dad wanted us both to have a future, and I intend to protect that. I need time. Maybe we both do." With legal confirmation of her rights, Lisa initiated the final steps of probate. She worked with officials to transfer the house title properly, liquidate accounts as required, and donate her mother's chosen items to the town library and food pantry. When the paperwork was finally signed, an action witnessed formally with the attorney present, Lisa felt a calm she hadn't known since the day she'd boarded the plane to come home. Justice echoed quietly through each room. The fear was gone, replaced by the honest echo of memory and a new sense of authority. Lisa wandered the halls one last time, her hands brushing the walls, bidding a silent farewell to the haunted uncertainty that had marked her return. She called a locksmith and directed that the locks be changed, not out of spite, but because the time for secrets was finished. For Jessica and Mark, the loss of reputation and family standing was sobering. Forced to move out by court order, they packed their remaining belongings amid a silence broken only by the shuffle of boxes. Lisa did not watch from the window. She reminded herself that compassion and justice were not opposites, and in protecting her own legacy, she was also honoring the lessons her parents had instilled. In town, word of the Halberg situation faded in and out of conversation. Some sympathized with Lisa, admiring her courage. Others shook their heads. How quickly a family could come undone. Lisa held her head high, determined not to be defined by scandal or sorrow, but by the clarity and conviction with which she had acted. Justice, at last, had been served, not as vengeance, but as truth made whole. The family legacy was safe, the light in her parents' name restored, and Lisa, though forever changed, had finally reclaimed her place, not only in the house, but in the story of her family. Cold retribution. The days following Jessica's and Mark's forced departure were marked not by celebration or relief, but by a profound, icy quiet. Lisa moved through the Halberg house as if inhabiting a museum, each room a testament to old wounds and the cost of truth. No one congratulated her. No one threw their arms around her in victory. Retribution, she learned, was far colder and lonelier than she'd ever imagined. Jessica and Mark left just after sunrise on a muggy Tuesday. Lisa watched from behind the living room curtains as they loaded the last of their suitcases and cardboard boxes into a battered pickup truck. There were no lingering goodbyes, no backward glances, just the snap of the car door and the low rumble of the engine fading down Willow Drive. The house, for the first time since their parents' deaths, was truly silent. Lisa felt a peculiar emptiness settle over her as she wandered through the now emptied guest rooms. A pair of Jessica's earrings, forgotten on the bathroom sink, caught the sun. Mark's cologne still lingered faintly in the hallway. Lisa gathered these remnants mechanically, packing them into a small, nondescript box. She taped the top and addressed it, more out of habit than hope that it would ever be claimed. For days, Lisa could not bring herself to enter her parents' bedroom. The last confrontation, so full of tension and exposed wounds, seemed to echo through the walls. She replayed the scene in her mind, but now, with every detail cold and sharp, she felt lost between satisfaction and regret. The justice she had fought so hard to restore had come at a price. The fracture in her family felt irrevocable. Neighbors approached her in the following days with cautious sympathy. Mrs. Dalrymple, who had watched Lisa and Jessica play hopscotch in the driveway as children, tucked a note of support into her mailbox. The pastor, from her mother's church, stopped by for tea, offering a prayer for peace and reconciliation. But Lisa's gratitude was measured and distant. She thanked them, but there was a firmness in her tone, a quiet signal that she was not asking for pity or community gossip. Word of Lisa's actions had already circled through the tight-knit town. Some admired her strength and firmness. Others whispered about the cold Halberg girl who'd turned her own kin out of their childhood home. Lisa ignored the speculation, but at night she wrestled with guilt and the chill of her own resolve. She had not acted in anger, and yet the consequences for Jessica and Mark were absolute. It was during these nights that Lisa most keenly felt the coldness of retribution. She did not gloat over their misfortune. On the contrary, she found herself mourning what she had lost. Not just her parents, but her sister as well. The memory of childhood laughter, shared secrets, and late-night talks felt impossibly distant. Occasionally, she sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, trying to write a letter of explanation or reconciliation, but the words always faltered. Everything felt either too harsh or too forgiving, and so the letters ended up crumpled in the wastebasket. Yet life, indifferent to personal sorrow, pressed on. Lisa poured herself into the practicalities of managing the estate, working long hours, transcribing inventory lists, cataloging heirlooms, and corresponding with attorneys. Each task was a small assertion of control over her unruly grief and the shards of her trust. But there was no escaping the knowledge that, in protecting her parents' legacy, she had chosen isolation. Jessica, for her part, did not try to reach out. From time to time, town gossip granted Lisa an update. Jessica and Mark had found a modest apartment on the other side of town, away from the neighbors who eyed them with thinly veiled judgment. Mark struggled to find steady work after the loss of his business clients. Jessica, once the golden daughter of the church in the hub of community events, kept to herself. Lisa imagined her sister's loneliness and shame and wondered whether either of them could ever bridge the chasm between them. The only communication between them came weeks later, in the form of a terse, apologetic letter. Jessica's handwriting, a painful echo of their mother's, urged Lisa to consider forgiveness, citing regret and confusion, insisting the betrayal had not started as malice, but as fear. Lisa read the letter several times, feeling more hollow with each rereading. Whatever warmth there might have been had been replaced by the calculated, cold resolve of someone who had been forced to face hard consequences. She placed the letter in a folder marked Family, unsure if she would ever respond. Despite her outward composure, Lisa grappled with resentment. She could not easily forgive a betrayal that had been methodical and deeply personal. She steeled herself against the notion that time alone would heal the rupture. Retribution, she realized, did not always satisfy as much as it cleared space for grief, reflection, and, eventually, growth. In small, everyday moments, Lisa felt the absence of family most intensely. She'd walk into a sunlit room, expecting to find Jessica curled up with coffee and a newspaper, or hear Mark's voice drifting up from the garden. Each time, memory stung her with a reminder that she had chosen to uphold justice over harmony. She began to understand that the restoration of her parents' wishes had given her back her own integrity, but cost her something precious and irreplaceable. As autumn approached, Lisa's resolve did not soften, but her perspective subtly shifted. She accepted invitations from old friends for dinner or coffee, rekindling connections that had grown neglected in the months of tension. She found solace in small acts of kindness, donating unused clothes, volunteering at the local library in her mother's memory. Each action reestablished a little warmth in a heart that had grown cold and hard from necessity. Sometimes, Lisa wandered through the family home late at night, the creak of hardwood floors and whisper of wind through the garden, evoking both loss and endurance. She allowed herself to sit in her parents' room at last, touching photographs and letters, acknowledging how deeply wounds could shape a life. The justice achieved had been real, but the aftertaste remained bittersweet. Still, Lisa reminded herself that cold retribution was not the end of her story or her family's. It was only a necessary passage, a cleansing fire to burn away lies and empty promises. True healing, she hoped, might one day come, but only in its own time, and only if faced honestly. And so, as the season turned and the leaves along Willow Drive blazed gold and red beneath the autumn sky, Lisa stood in the doorway of the house she had fought so fiercely to protect. Alone, but unyielding, she promised herself she would move forward, carrying both the weight of what was lost and the hope of what might still be found. However cold, that promise felt in her hands. Healing and transformation. Autumn gradually brushed the town with tangerine, gold, and crimson, painting Willow Drive in warmth, even as the air grew crisper. Lisa found unexpected comfort in the changing seasons. Summer's intensity, the heartbreak, the hunt for evidence, the chill of retribution, was giving way to a quieter, deeply personal reckoning. Now, in the stillness of falling leaves and sunlit afternoons, she finally allowed herself to reflect on what had been lost and what might yet be restored. The echo of emptiness that had haunted the house began to recede. Lisa was surprised by the mundane ways healing inched forward. Sunlight filtering gently onto the kitchen table, the scent of clean laundry, the familiar tick of the old mantel clock. Daily routines, once heavy with loneliness, became grounding. She took pleasure in restoring order to her parents' home, caring for the wild garden in the mornings, and tackling the attic's endless boxes of forgotten treasures in the afternoons. Each small act was a way of reclaiming agency, of gentle self-forgiveness. For weeks, Lisa had avoided the townspeople's gaze, burdened by the whispers about her defiant justice. But as time passed, some neighbors became sources of quiet support. Mrs. Dalrymple dropped off a small pumpkin pie and apple jam, lingering on the porch to reminisce about Lisa's mother. A retired teacher invited Lisa to an informal book club at the library. These were gestures Lisa accepted at first, out of politeness, but soon for the genuine comfort and reconnection they provided. The relationship with her extended family remained fragile, yet Lisa saw the wisdom in reaching out to those who had stood by her, cousins who'd called with concern, an uncle who wrote an old-fashioned letter of encouragement. She replied with gratitude, careful not to dwell on bitterness or blame, instead sharing simple updates about the house and her plans for the future. That spirit of openness, she realized, was less about forgetting the past and more about rebuilding on honest ground. One evening, as the wind rattled the red-gold leaves outside, Lisa found herself organizing the papers she had stored away. Photos, letters, birthday cards, even the will that had become the instrument of so much conflict. Sorting through her childhood memories, she was struck by her parents' devotion, the deep intention behind every family photograph and handwritten note. It brought her to tears, but this time, the tears were tender, a release rather than a wound reopened. Jessica's letter still sat in the family folder on Lisa's desk, a folded document filled with regret and longing for forgiveness. Lisa must have reread it a dozen times. The pain lingered, but its edge softened. Lisa recognized, finally, that bridges could not be mended by time alone. Healing was an active process, reaching out, risking vulnerability, and making peace with the parts of the past that could never be erased. After much deliberation, Lisa wrote a short response to her sister. She did not offer quick forgiveness, nor did she rehash old grievances. Instead, she urged Jessica to take care of herself, acknowledge the loss they both felt, and left the door open for dialogue. She posted the letter, realizing it was less an olive branch and more a gentle removal of a wall. She no longer wished to maintain. Change had come to the old house as well. Lisa considered selling it. The arguments, the betrayals, the echo of tense footsteps in its corridors sometimes threatened to sour every good memory. Yet the garden her mother loved blossomed defiantly, and the sunroom where her father read every Sunday now drew Lisa in with its golden afternoon light. In the end, she decided to stay, at least for a while longer. The house itself, she realized, was not just a monument to loss, but a living space, one that could hold both sorrow and hope if she let it. To mark this period of renewal, Lisa hosted a small dinner for friends and the family she still trusted. They shared roasted vegetables and stories, laughter rising over the clink of dishes and the old jazz records Lisa dusted off in the den. No one spoke directly of what had happened, but their presence and the warmth that filled the house was the sign Lisa didn't know she needed. Sometime after dessert, Lisa stepped into the garden, shivering in the brisk air, and realized she no longer felt alone. Lisa also found her hands longing for purpose. She volunteered more hours at the local library, organizing a palmutasi project to preserve the town's oral histories. Listening to neighbors remember their childhoods and family rituals brought new perspective. People's stories, she saw, all carried brokenness and renewal. Her family's scars were neither unique nor insurmountable. Gradually, Lisa reconnected with herself. She resumed her old habit of morning walks before sunrise, stopping to admire the slow, persistent unfurling of the day. She found circles of friends she'd let drift away, took up watercolor painting again, and even allowed herself to imagine building the life outside old shadows. Maybe traveling, maybe returning to her original career, or simply creating new rituals within these familiar walls. Months after the storm of secrets and severed trust, Lisa sat quietly in her parents' sunroom, a mug of tea cradled in her palms. She no longer saw only the ghosts of conflict and betrayal. She saw the outlines of growth. There was grief, but there was also gratitude for the resilience she hadn't known she possessed, for the clarity the crisis had forced upon her life, and for the possibility of healing, not as a return to what once was, but as the foundation on which something new could be built. The transformation was not dramatic or complete. It came softly, in the accumulation of small mercies and daily choices. Lisa tended to the last roses that bloomed defiantly against the encroaching winter, promising herself that even as coldness approached, she would hold space for warmth, for forgiveness, and for change. Looking out the window as dusk fell and laughter drifted in from the kitchen, Lisa made herself a quiet vow to honor both what was lost and what had been saved, to care gently for those wounds that remained, and to open her heart to whatever new seasons might bring. In the end, healing was not something that happened to her. It was something she chose to nurture day by day, act by act, hope by hope. A new beginning, as winter's chill gave way to a slow and tentative spring. Lisa looked out over the garden her mother once tended with loving hands. Old rose bushes, pruned back, watered, and stabilized, were budding once again, delicate green shoots pushing through the remnants of frost. For Lisa, these signs of life mirrored a new readiness within herself, a fragile hope gradually taking root where only grief and cold retribution had recently dwelled. The Halberg house had finally settled into true quiet, but not the brittle, suffocating kind that had haunted it in those aftermath weeks. Instead, this silence was alive, filled with possibility, and a peace Lisa had not thought possible even months earlier. Gone were the angry voices, the subterfuge, and the undercurrent of tension. Now, sunlight drifted from room to room, illuminating dust motes and family portraits alike with the same gentle patience. Lisa's mornings adopted a gentle discipline. She would rise early, make coffee, and sit on the porch with her planner and a pen, mapping out both her chores and gentle ambitions for the day. The gardens needed tending, and so did the long-neglected attic. Legal loose ends remained: final estate notices, property taxes, a donation to the library in her mother's honor. But these tasks no longer felt like burdens. Instead, each one was a small milestone, proof of the ground she had regained. There were moments, of course, when the quiet triggered melancholy, especially on rainy days, when the house echoed with the past, and Lisa instinctively expected to hear her mother humming from the kitchen, or the dull thud of her father's shoes in the entryway. But she learned not to hurry these emotions away. Instead, She allowed herself space to feel, weep, or simply remember, trusting that such acts were a kind of gentle honoring of what had come before. Spring also reawakened the local community. Neighbors emerged from hibernation, tidying up lawns, sharing seeds, and waving from across low fences. Lisa found herself stepping out more often, exchanging pleasantries, and slowly, naturally, being woven back into the fabric of small-town life. Mrs. Dalrymple stopped by with flower bulbs, insisting the front walkway needed a punch of color. Lisa smiled at the suggestion and spent a Saturday planting tulips, knees muddied, a soft ache in her heart replaced by gratitude. She also began volunteering with greater purpose, organizing Saturday reading circles at the library. The joy in the faces of children as they listened to stories was infectious and called forth a gentler, almost forgotten side of herself. Lisa found herself laughing more easily, letting others see past her reserve. She even rekindled old friendships, accepting invitations to coffee, joining a local hiking group, and saying yes to spontaneous lunches that once would have made her anxious. The more Lisa opened herself to new experiences, the more she sensed old wounds, while not forgotten, were no longer the only shape her life could take. She booked a short trip to the city, staying at a cozy guest house for a weekend, to visit an art exhibit and see a play. She shopped for new clothes, sketched city scenes in a small notebook, and realized for the first time that independence, rather than exile, could be a gift. Back at Willow Drive, Lisa found herself dreaming about the future, a concept that only months ago had seemed closed to her. She considered options she'd shelved for too long, enrolling in graduate school, launching a small business, maybe converting part of the house into an artist's studio or a rental space for travelers. She researched grants, explored online courses in creative writing, and even drafted a business plan for offering heritage tours of the historic district. Amid these dreams, Lisa did not forget the legacy her parents left behind, nor ignore the hard lessons of the previous year. Sometimes, she reread her correspondence with Jessica, shorter, more neutral, but carrying a new sense of tentative goodwill. Both women had changed. Reconciliation came in small, careful steps. A birthday card, a thoughtful but brief phone call, news shared about an old teacher who had passed away. They did not force forgiveness or pretend the past had not happened, but they honored the effort to move forward. Lisa's relationship with Mark was more distant. His letters, when they arrived, were stiff and businesslike, referencing residual estate paperwork or practical matters. Lisa no longer felt bitterness, only a quiet, respectful detachment. She understood that some relationships, even those written deep in family blood, could not return to former warmth. Acceptance, she realized, was another kind of freedom. By late spring, Lisa's transformation had become visible even to the outside world. Friends noted how she seemed lighter, more present. She hosted a small garden brunch to thank those who had supported her: neighbors, the librarian, and a handful of friends from the library's story circle. The conversation was light, the food simple, laughter rising over the wild violets blooming along the fence. There, in the filtered sunlight, Lisa made a quiet toast to new beginnings and to honoring those who made us strong enough to start again. Nature marked her progress in delicate, ordinary ways. The return of bees to the roses, robins gathering twigs by the kitchen window, winds carrying away the last brown leaves of winter. Lisa found herself keeping a journal, recording not only tasks and plans, but also small delights. The way rain sounded on the sunroom's roof, the taste of Grandma's gingerbread recipe, the first time she caught herself singing while making breakfast. A new chapter also meant giving herself permission to build different traditions. She invited her closest neighbors for Sunday potluck dinners, organized a town photo exhibition at the library, and gently reached out to cousins for a summer family picnic, bridging the distance that loss and anger had created. When she felt pangs of loneliness, Lisa walked through the garden, pruning and tending, drawing strength from the stubborn resilience of each blooming stem. Looking back, Lisa saw that new beginnings were not about erasing the past, but weaving its lessons and sorrows into something sturdier. The house, once a battleground, was now her sanctuary, a place where she could remember, create, and hope in equal measure. She often paused in the sunroom in the late afternoon, tea in hand, watching gold spill across the floorboards, feeling the gentle press of gratitude and expectation. On the first fully warm day of June, Lisa stood at the end of the driveway, felt the breeze in her hair, and smiled. The journey had been hard, and its scars would not vanish overnight. But the future, at last, felt open. She walked back toward her front door, sunlight at her back, ready to step forward into whatever her new beginning would bring.